Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Malamarie Sinha. She is an energy healer, astrologer, Brennan Healing Science practitioner, and the founder of Malamarie Energy. I want to mention too that Malamarie combines the ancient wisdom of astrology with the transformational power of energy healing. So it's bringing these two elements together to create the magic that you create. The full bio will be at the end. This is just my brief introduction to her. The first question that I love asking everyone, it never left me. How would you introduce yourself, Mala Marie? Who are you in this very moment?
Hmm. That's a great question, Valeria. But first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for
Thank
having me
you.
here on your podcast. And I want to say thank you also to the audience that
Mm,
will tune into this. So I think that that's potentially a very straightforward question and also potentially a question that has a lot of layers in it. So I
mm,
think the part that stands out for me is like, who am I in the moment? And what I always like to do is just reduce things to the lowest common denominator. So in my mind, that's like, okay, that's like an opportunity. When you've asked me this, is to tune into the sensations in my body, right? Because they
mm,
come first,
mm,
right? And then after that, emotion builds up, and then
mm,
thought builds upon that, and belief systems. And so in doing that, it's sort of like it really subverts this just inability that people have to sort of connect into the present moment, right? It's just this
right.
embodied somatic presence. And so,
Mm,
this is something that I have really worked with over the years, and it's part of like the foundation for how I work with energies and how I work with people. I look at it and first of all, of course, in my own life, I look at it through these levels of the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual, right? But the first part, of course, is just, you can do it through breathing, but even just feeling into the sensations in your body. And so,
mm,
and
mm.
from there, I've created the life that I have right now, right? I have my business, Malamarie Energy, which is for me this, really tremendous sort of accumulation of all the years of knowledge and learning because I have several degrees and the practical experience that I have. And
Yeah.
so I've been able to combine them into this particular modality. And it's taken me many years to get here. And so I would say, does that make sense?
It does. Wow. And how did you get here in a sense in the very how did you uncover these gifts? So this it sounds like this very natural interest, right? An inclination to do what you're doing. So how did that start? I'm curious to know, Mama Marie.
Yes. Well, I grew up in a very spiritual home. Both my parents
Mm,
were
yeah.
adhere to their religions. My father is from India and he was a
Mm,
Hindu, and my mother, uh, she's still alive. She's a Christian. And so we were brought up, actually, my brother and I, we were brought up with both religions. I went to church regularly. I went to temple regularly. So automatically I had these different influences, right? Two cultures coming together. I grew up in
mm,
Canada, and it never was in any way conflictual inside of myself, but it sort of gave me this broad perspective. And I think very early on, I was really looking for what is the meaning of existence, right? And
mm.
what is the meaning for me
Yeah.
within this whole panoply of what existence might be. And
Right.
so at a very young age, I was asking these questions. And I just also, both my parents, while they were very much involved in their religions, over time, they both moved into sort of the mystical, spiritual aspects of their respective religions, right? And of course, that
Right.
got translated down into who I am.
Mm,
And so my search began, and my spiritual journey really began in my early 20s. And it was while I was, studying at school, and eventually I went on to do spiritual studies with the energy healing. But what, it was just once I sort of discovered this quest for, I guess let's call it enlightenment, right? Like that's how I
mm.
started thinking that there was a
Yeah.
goal, and once you reached it, that was it,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And
Yeah. Most people
and
do.
so yeah, and so at one point I said to myself, I just, with certain dissatisfactions in the life that I was living, I thought, you know what, I just want to know what it means to be one with God. And I
Mm,
just literally, that was became my major focus. It took 13
mm.
years, but I got to this point and I hit this level. And what I understood once I hit that level was that I got what I was looking for, but the original question wasn't, how to be one with God. The original question really was like how to complete what I need to do on this planet. And so what I know is that this is my last lifetime on earth. And so
Oh, wow.
by the grace of the work that I have done on myself and my spiritual journey, I have sort of transcended that. And then I was thrown back into regular life, and it's like I thought that when I reached this enlightenment point, that everything would work out for me and I
Yes.
wouldn't have any problems. But that's not actually how it works. I still have issues; they come to me, whatnot. But I just have the tools and the skills. Like even if it's unfamiliar, I know how to deal with these things. And so I mean, in a nutshell, that's how it's unfolded for me.
Yes. Wow. I love that though. I love the question how, yeah, to be one with God and then how to be the fullest expression of our being, right? Of what
Hmm.
we are meant to
Hmm.
be.
Exactly.
Wow, these are
Exactly.
powerful questions. And then you also mentioned enlightenment as a lot of people think of a destination, but it's not too. So what I came to understand, I'm a student of Vedanta, which is a
Hmm.
Hindu
Yep. Yep.
philosophy
I do. Yep.
that I really, really, really respect. And I mean, it's very close to my heart, I have to say. It's my best friend. Kind of keep going back to that as a reminder of what I am besides who.
Hmm.
So that, according to Vedanta, really what we are is not something that changes. So what changes is the body, mind, and even the tendencies of different lifetimes
Hmm.
that come along that we express in here. Those are also belong to nature. So that's not really what we are. So now it's so much
Hmm.
easier to kind of dance around these realms, with the human experience. I feel a lot more free to kind of it's okay to be this way or that way. So there's no not much of that grip that I used to have, but still it's a practice, isn't it, Malamarie? Because it doesn't really, I notice I love healing and anything that has to do with well-being practices and what you do, energy healing. Astrology is a mystery to me still, so I have a lot of questions about that. But perhaps that's the reason why I'm very interested in these things, because I know it's needed for the human experience in the sense of embracing my humanness fully and also my divinity,
Hmm.
both. So like fully human and fully divine. So we are
Hmm.
not pushing away anything. So I can't wait to answer these questions already that I have here, but the ones that will come to me as well. I guess I will start with astrology because it feels very complex to me. Yeah, talk to me about your work as an astrologer and how far do you go with it with your clients, helping them to heal?
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so the astrology came into my life. I had a chart done when I was in my mid 20s by a very good astrologer. And when I went to see him, now I had read pop astrology as I was growing up as a teenager, but when I went to see him, he looked at my chart and he said, you could be doing this, you could do this. I was like,
Wow.
okay. And so at the
Yes,
end
why
of
not?
that reading, what he did is he wrote down a list of books and he gave me my chart. And then about 3 years later, I was going through my Saturn return, which is a very sort of prominent time. Even people who don't know much about astrology know, like everybody goes through the Saturn return between ages of 28 to 30. So I was going through my
Oh,
Saturn return and I just picked up the chart and I started reading the books and I just figured it out by myself. And I have to be honest, I have learned many things, but it's like this whole informational library downloaded in my library. And ever since, it's kind of like runs like a sidetrack on my brain, like sort of understanding my reality through it. And at one point I thought, oh, this is silly, like, oh, it's not real. And I stopped following for a couple of years actually. And then I came back and I found actually that all these things that I was had happened, and that if I had known about them, that they'd be upcoming, or at least understood what the energies were that were
Mm.
upcoming, I could actually have better situated myself to deal with them.
Right. Right.
And so, initially, like, I wasn't really that interested in doing charts for other people. It was very much like my journey up until this point has been very much about a self transformational journey,
Yeah.
and learning on all the different levels of my being. And so that was just kind of one aspect. And of course, I did family and friends, and I just learned over the years. And it
Yeah.
was a very quick study. I'm quite intellectual and very mental about these things. And so it was very easy to understand. And I just read and read and read. And one of the ways is I'd sort of read and read and read for a few months, put it away and come back. And so the energy goes in the left brain, and then you sort of
Mm.
percolates inside of you and then comes back out as sort of
Yeah.
knowledge and wisdom through the right brain a few months later. So,
Yeah.
over the years, I just came to sort of use it as like, I mean, there are many ways to understand what's going on out there, but I find it to be one of the most comprehensive. And I have to be honest, of all the things that I've learned and studied, it just never gets old, and I'm
Right.
always learning new things about it. And I think truly that there's as many ways to read an astrological chart or to do astrology as there are
Oh,
stars in the sky.
really?
Astrology, it has no beginning and no end. It's the solar system, right? And I actually recently, sort of, somebody was mentioning somewhere that young people especially are very disillusioned with religion, and actually a lot of
Oh,
them
yeah.
are really picking up astrology. Like, I've been shocked at the younger generation. There's no need to explain, is this real, is this valid, is this true?
Mm.
They just
Mm.
know.
Mm.
And so I find that very encouraging, and I think social media has really helped with that. There's like lots of great apps out there. There's lots of wonderful astrologers, and there's so many ways. There's so many different niche aspects of astrology that can be done. And so, so I used it in my own life as a transformational tool. And at the time, I sort of thought, well, I like doing this, but I didn't really consider making it my career, because I'm not sure. I met so many astrologers who said, "Oh, I can't make a living off of this," but so
Yeah.
I just kind of continue to work with it. Was always reading, always had a little bit of a hand in it, and
Mm.
and then when I
Yeah.
started this business a few years ago, and I was just doing energy healing, and I thought, oh, I've got this great tool that will help me understand where people are. And I think, especially in the West, it's really important, for people to understand mentally, to be able to have a conversation and discuss what's going on. And I find that the astrology very quickly allows me to hone in on what's going on with the person, right? It's all there, right? The way they're
Wow.
holding themselves back, challenges
Wow.
they may have, the gifts that they don't
Mm.
know about,
Mm. Mm.
past
Mm.
lives, ancestral, dynamics. All of these different things are there. And so it's just been such a wonderful tool to have. So I started using it very early on. And so I like to think, this is the language of the stars. And then when I heal, I'm healing with the energy of the stars. So it's sort of this
Oh,
beautiful combination, this feedback loop. And, of course, I use it in my own life, but it just allows me a very quick understanding. Like, one of the things I've been doing recently with it is just sort of, especially the large planets like Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. Those are really like markers of where generation is at. And we now have like large swaths of the population that have at least two of those planets in single signs. So
oh,
that's how, it passes through the sign, and then people are born, and then that becomes their signature, right, in their chart. And so they kind of grow up as sort of like seeds within the yeast of society, and they kind of rise. And then as these people move through life, we begin to understand what those particular signs are all about. And so
that's
now
interesting.
what we're very much about with the younger generation is like restructuring the world that we live in, right? And
Yeah.
just like governmental systems, education philosophies, religion, and like everything is up for grabs right now. So
Mm.
I
Mm.
just using it in my practice just feels like, a natural progression,
Yeah.
and I know it'll never get old. There's, just, it just never, it's a never ending fascination for me, for sure.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It sounds like it. Yeah, it sounds fascinating to me. I love anything about the the human mind's curiosity to know itself. Basically, that's what the mind's trying
Yeah.
to do. Or I mean, consciousness, really. So it's really,
Mm-hmm.
really beautiful, though, to see the
Mm-hmm.
unfolding of that. Humans being open to their own kind of depth.
Yeah.
There's something
Yeah.
about that that just
Yeah.
kind of that I'm devoted to. That's what I'm very, very much within my own life. Like always
Mm-hmm.
being a mystic, trying to trying everything and just seeing what happens. Like a lot of times what I do since I was very little, you speak of the stars, I always talked to the sky. I never understood exactly why I did that, but I think children do that naturally, right,
Mm-hmm.
Malamarie? They do that
Mm-hmm.
naturally. So I used to do that a lot, and then to this day, I yeah, I can't help it. But at night, especially here, I just go outside and I look up and I start talking to one star specifically that kind of, I don't know, in my eyes, it kind of shines brighter than the other ones and kind of almost like sparkles. I don't know. It feels like a communication, and my heart opens, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm communicating with something that's
Mm-hmm.
here, and it's so present, and it feels like a friend. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're here, you're back, and then it feels that way. Like when you meet somebody that you haven't seen in a while for a few days, and you're like a really best friend, somebody you love. Like yesterday felt that way, um, in a very powerful way that I had not experienced in a long time. Like, oh, you're here. Because it
Mm-hmm.
was, I think it was hidden by the clouds or something. And I was looking up the sky, and then, and I was missing that one specific one that is usually there's a direction that she is. So anyway, I want to mention that feels like really, really, really good at at the body, the heart level.
Mm-hmm.
So, how would you explain that to somebody like me who doesn't understand anything about astrology? How can you, in a sense, Malamarie, kind of simplify that, in language that we can understand? Because it is very mysterious, and I know it's mathematical too. It's very scientific, but at the same time, it's very complex. I feel astrology. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very interesting question, Valeria. So, of course, everybody has their natal birth chart, right? And that happens, we need to know your birth date, the day, the month, the year, and then
Mm,
the location that you were born and the time that you were born.
yes.
And so, what a natal chart is comprised of is the moment that you're born. It's actually the moment of your first breath. There's like an imprint from the universe onto you of the positioning of the planets, right? And then the
Yeah.
next moment, the planets continue to move and continue to move. And so that
Right.
is your imprint that you carry with you through life, right? The natal
Right.
chart.
Uh,
So the way I like to explain it, right, when you talk about that star in the sky, is this like the
yeah.
moon. The moon cycles, right, are so obvious. Like you must know,
Yeah.
like the full moon, the new moon, all of these
Mhm.
different,
Yes.
of course, like within the course of a month, right? And so, of course, if you think about it, the moon, right, of how it affects the tides, right, the low tide and the high tide, and
Right.
that's something you can track with great regularity. And also, the
Right.
sun rises and sets every day, right? This is a constant that we live our lives by, right, and have, since
Yes.
humanity began, right? So
Yes.
these kinds of things, and so those are the big luminaries, right? Of course, those are really important, your sun sign and your moon sign. But you
Mm.
can see that the effect that they have on you. So why wouldn't the other planets also have an effect on you,
Mm.
right? And they
Mm.
all kind of have a meaning. Like the sun is like your purpose, right? The moon is like your emotions, right? And
Mm.
then we look at other planets like Mercury, right? Is your how you think, right? How you process information, and
Yeah.
Venus, and so on down the line. So here's the thing: is that you have this natal chart, but the planets have continued to move, and so they go around, and then they make aspects, like, and the aspects are geometric. Like you can have 90 degrees, you can have 120 degrees.
Wow.
Some are easy and harmonious. And which harmonious is great, but sometimes easy can be lazy, right? And others are
Mm.
challenging and
Mhm.
dynamic. So challenging can be, yes, maybe hard, but dynamic is like, wow, there's something going on here. I'm being challenged by this, but look at what I'm learning, right? So,
Wow.
nothing in astrology goes away. And so we all have, like,
Mm.
what's so incredible is when you look at people's different charts and you just see how drastically different they are and how one person is so unique compared to the next. And that you can't
Yeah.
even compare, like, you can't even compare twins really, because you don't know what they're bringing in from their past lives, even though they're
Yeah.
born in the same room, and they may have at the same birth time. And so it's just, there's there's so many factors that go into it, but really it's like what makes us so unique. And I just love the customization that I can get from reading the astrological chart. And certainly, like I know a lot now. There's human design is really significant, and
Oh,
but a
yeah.
lot of these things have astrology at their base, right? And so,
Right.
there's also tarot, numerology. I mean, I bring all of those things in maybe when I do a reading, but the base is the astrology because it's just so complete, right? It contains everything that's going on. And like I say, nothing in your chart goes away. So you'll have this configuration of these natal planets, right? It's
Yeah.
almost like an origami, a
Oh,
little,
yeah.
like a little figure.
Yeah.
And then if you open that paper out and you can see the creases,
Yeah.
but that fully open paper
Uh,
is showing you all of existence, all of reality. And those are the pieces that are you, is your life,
mm,
what's happening to you.
mm,
And so all
mm,
existence is contained within that mandala of of the natal chart, right? And so it's not an
yeah.
accident that it's a circle, right? How we see,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Here we are on the planet looking up at the stars in the sky. The earth has a rotation, the sun has a rotation. So you begin to
Right.
layer all these things, and you're right, it's not, it's
It's not.
complex, and
It
it
is.
can be complicated, but there's so many levels at which you can enter into. And this is what I love about this day and age that we live in. Like, so
Mm,
many different apps, it's easy, anybody
yeah.
can get their chart, can get a read, and
Yeah.
and can go in so many different directions. And so even if you don't think that, I mean, of course not everybody's going to be an astrologer, but it's really like, it behooves us all, I think, to have a little bit of knowledge, knowing your SMR, as I say, your sun, moon,
Mm,
rising sign,
yeah.
to sort of know, like, the thing is, most people are living their chart. And so, but
Um,
sometimes we get
yeah.
sidetracked, we get stuck. And so, you know, working, like, consulting an astrologer can really help give you the lay of the land, the big land. Like, I mean, most people are on track living the lives that they incarnated to experience. So,
Mm.
does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah. So in a nutshell, it's very unique. It depends, right? It's not something that you cannot give this it's not a one size fits all, right? You cannot give this whole explanation for. Yeah.
It's like a fingerprint,
Fingerprint. So it's
your
very
fingerprint.
unique. Yeah. Wow. That's funny that you mentioned human design because I interviewed somebody recently and she asked for my information that everything that you would ask as an astrologer,
Mhm.
like what you just mentioned, she asked me for everything, and then the date, the place, the year, everything about my birth and the time, all that. And then she kind of gave me this overview, of course, not a detailed description, but an overview, and and it kind of fit. It did. It kind of made sense. That some things made sense and some didn't.
Mhm.
It might be because of my also understanding. I keep going back to Vedanta. It's a non-dual understanding, so that's my main practice. So I keep
Mhm.
going back to that understanding that everything is sacred. God, um, it's not that God everything. It's not that God's in everything, but everything is in God.
Mhm.
So that kind of, I don't know, that reflection and contemplation of this knowledge has changed my perception of life. And
Mhm.
then every time I come across healing modalities, I'm very curious about trying them because the challenges of body mind, they still here. Some of them are still here from the past, from the traumas that I have experienced. So I'm very curious to know more. But at some point, I find it very limiting. And then I don't give up. I just kind of let go of certain things, of certain healing modalities. And then I go back to my kind of top of the view understanding that everything is sacred and just yeah, there's something about that that kind of gives me more flexibility within the dance of the human experience and the challenges because
Mhm.
it can be very challenging right here,
Mhm. Mhm.
very much is actually for most of us.
Yeah, a non-dual understanding is very comforting, I feel, because
Yeah.
everything is changing, everything is moving, everything is flowing. Existence, whether it's the rocks, whether it's your body, the trees,
Mm,
the house that
mhm.
you live in, and it's a
Yeah.
flow, right? of the flow of existence,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, that all that stuff really underlies what I do too. It's like
Yeah.
that's because when you talk about sort of, some things rang true and some didn't, because
Right.
anybody that comes to see me, right, they're in a position in their life, they're in a place in their life. And so if I do
Mhm.
charts for people who are very young, I'm kind of giving them the playbook of what's
Yeah.
potentially
I
going to
like that.
happen. If people come to see me and they're older, in their 60s and 70s, it's like
Yeah.
I'm not telling them something they don't know. We're just kind of
Right.
reframing, or maybe we're pulling them out of the places they
Mm.
created resistances in their life. And
Right.
so that's kind of a different experience. And so what I find, especially with older clients, like the older you go when you have experience, because that chart is you, right? And
Mm.
so when I explain to them, and it becomes more of a conversation, a back and forth, and I'll
Mm.
say, well, it looks like this, these two energies were around, and then what happened? How did that unfold for
Yeah.
you? And because
Yeah.
even in my own life, right, I see transits coming up. I know the energies that are involved, but I have never been able to predict exactly what's going to happen. And that's sort of the
Wow.
magic of
Yeah.
God, and sort of like the
Wow.
unknowable aspect of existence, that I think that we
Mm.
have to be humbled and always have
Right.
grace, that sort of grace before stillness. It's like, honestly, it's, so with the chart, it's like, yeah, so
Yeah.
these are the things coming up. Like a lot of times people come and they want me to sort of maybe, I just sort of say, like, tell their fortune. It's like, when am I going to meet so and
Yes.
so? And but
Yeah.
you know what? I have seen
Mhm.
things so reliably saying those things in the chart, and then seeing it's not actually unfolded that way for a person. Like, for some
Uh,
people, the perfect relationship is actually, maybe you're a violinist in an orchestra practicing 7 hours a day. That might be your perfect
mm.
relationship. So
Mm.
it's not
Mm.
like Prince Charming is going to come over the hills on a white horse, and then people will come
Yes.
and say, "Oh my gosh, he came on a black horse," and not
Yes.
satisfied. So I think it's more important,
That-
it's more about telling people the energies that are around them, because and how to move with that flow of existence, right? The fact that,
Yeah, I love
all
that.
you
I
ever
love
have is the
that.
happening in the
Mm.
moment, right? This present moment.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so I think that that's
Yeah.
important to understand, which is why I like to work with sort of the levels that people exist on. And I feel that astrology a lot just really addresses that kind of mental level
Mm. Yeah.
and kind of helps explain the other levels, but it
Yes.
doesn't necessarily heal those other levels. It's just knowledge and awareness for the most part. But there is an energy in there that you are living that can be read through the astrological chart. And every astrologer is going to read that somewhat differently. In fact, that's how I learned, is I went to different astrologers, because just everybody uses a different type of language. But it's important to understand that any astrologer is only going to lens the information about who you are is through their own sort of mindset, through their own
Mm.
experiences, and you may
Mm.
not necessarily relate to them, right? So
Yeah.
some readings you're going to find are
Yeah.
more, I'm not going to say better, but may resonate more with you than other readings. So, and then,
Right.
and what's different about what I do is that, we uncover what's happening in the chart. And then the magic is that the energy works
Mm.
in those places, and it's quite something. So,
Wow. I
yeah.
gotta try it one of these days. I love trying everything. I
Hmm.
would love to try it. And I've tried so many. I mean, I have interviewed about 2,000 people, so
Oh
they
my gosh.
most of them are healers. And then I'm like, oh, let's try, let's try. And I tried so many things. And yeah, some things I don't know why, but some things really made a big impact, like in the sense of yeah, like it was magical though. It's almost like I couldn't figure that out. I couldn't by myself, and
Mhm.
I needed a guide, and we do, right, Mama Marie? We do need guides, isn't that interesting? We do need guides, and I see every person, everything that I do, I see life itself as my guide. So I'm always like listening and paying attention to what people
Yeah.
say and why we are having this conversation today. So I'm always paying attention. What am I here to? What is she saying that I'm supposed to hear? There's something that you're saying, or perhaps it is doing this, like doing a session and see how it goes. There's something here that that I'm that I'm supposed to be part of. I really feel that way. So I'm always
Mhm.
like listening, always, always, always. And of course, it's not easy to distinguish between what the mind wants, and then the flow of life, right? What life wants for us, the universe, and this orchestra, universal intelligence orchestra, as I call it. Yeah, there's something about that flow. I love that you mentioned that too, kind of letting go of the grip, trying so hard, to make something happen, even when it comes to healing. And just like I had a sharp pain that was becoming chronic for about 4 months. It was going like 5 months, and I never had chronic pain before. I'm like, how did this happen? And then I kept going back to how it happened. But then I did everything because I eat very healthy. I exercise. I do everything. I sleep. I mean, I meditate. I do everything that seems to be healthy. But then nothing worked until I tried, I think, one, two, three different kinds of healing modalities. And then the last one, the pain. The first one, the pain was 10, it went to 8. And then the second one went from 8 to 6, and then went back to 8 the next day or two. And then the last one that I did went from 8 to 0. And then
Wow.
I'm like,
Terrific.
wow, how did this happen? That's like magic.
Mhm.
and what does it, when you see that happening, is that because we are open and ready to receive that, that size of healings, like complete healing in that sense? Or it's something else? There is actually something working to help us directly. I wonder a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's definitely, I see this especially with the astrology, there's timing involved. I mean, even you can know all these things and they're
Yeah.
happening in your life, but the divine timing is just setting up, the people that you're supposed to meet and,
Mm,
the events that'll happen that sort of catalyze the energies maybe of that particular transit or even in the course of the day. I'm sure you've had days where it's
ah,
like, wow, like I could never have imagined that could happen to me. Or, you go traveling and you have adventures and these kinds of things. And so,
yeah.
these transits are always at work in our life, like always affecting us, right? And so it's just, again, it gets back to just being in the flow, being in the
Mm,
present moment so that you're there
mm,
and present and able to experience what's happening. But the other piece is that,
yeah.
yes, timing, and also it depends. Some people have more to clear. I mean, this is the
Oh,
thing, this is the individuality. Some people come in with a lot more karma. Younger people don't have
um,
the same karma that older people do, right? But
true.
everything is
Mm,
layered in society. Like one generation, the work they do is meant to be the stepping stone for the next generation, and so on and so on and so on, so
um,
that you're not reinventing the wheel, right? So, um,
yeah.
so in that sense, you may come to me and it might, I've had miraculous healings in just 1, 2, 3 sessions potentially, but it also, you may
Wow.
not get that. And we continue to work through the layers. I always start with the energy because I think that that is the magic. You can have instant healing with
Uh,
that. But if
yeah.
that doesn't work, then we sort of move down. The astrology is always giving you that mental awareness. We move down
Mm,
through the emotional body. And the last thing I usually do is the physical, where I talk about, I mean, I don't advise people on what to eat specifically, but I have, uh, I've been interested in health and diet all my life. I have a lot of knowledge, and I prefer to frame it because I'm not licensed as a nutritionist in any way, but it's these principles of right eating, right? And so,
yes.
I mean, the simplest way of describing that is like, yes, eat fruits and vegetables and stuff. But,
Yes.
sometimes that's a big ask for people, right?
Yeah.
So it just
Yeah.
depends. Everybody comes and they're at a different level, and it may take longer for some than others. But I do think that the magic of the energy, and when people come to me, it's not like they have to do a practice. I'm not sending them away with exercises to do. Now, it may come to that and it may enhance their healing. And they may find that the effects of the healing will last longer in their lives. But, you can read the testimonials on my website, and so
Yeah.
I always do my healings in a series of 4 because I'm interested in process and transformation. And always in the
Mm,
fourth session,
mm,
there is sort of a catalyzing a very transformational experience, or like a big aha moment. And what the
yeah.
thing about astrology and the way I do it is that I unfold it over the sessions, because I found when I went to readings, and I think most people have found, it's a barrage of information and it's like
Yes.
so overwhelming.
Yes.
So what I do is I break it down in small parts.
I like
And
that.
what I found is that whatever I'm discussing, which is something I've
Mm,
been intuitively drawn to discuss in the chart,
mm,
then that is usually what the energy healing ends up working with. So that's why I say there's this kind of like, you
Yeah.
know, energetic looping feedback loop between the two, right? And so
Right.
for example, like I had, I've had clients come to me, and you'd think that the first thing you talk about is the sun and the moon, but I could see that there were other things that needed to be set up first, and it was 4 sessions before I
Yeah.
even talked about the sun and the moon.
Right.
So it's so different from one person to the next. It just depends what you need, where you're at in your life. What have you already done? Like usually by the time people come to see me, they're usually pretty far along on a path of sort of like a spiritual awareness, because the
Yeah.
truth is, Valeria, people can't see energy, and if they can't see something,
Mm,
it doesn't exist, and so
mm,
goes over their
mm.
head. So I spend a
Yeah.
lot of time. I have a blog on my website, and
Yeah.
I discuss astrology, but especially when I discuss the energy, I'm really trying to explain it to people in a way that will help them understand how I do what I do. So
Right. Right.
how's that landing?
I love that. That you're very intuitive too, to know what
Mhm.
people need, right? Because a lot of
Mhm.
times they don't even know. We don't even know what we
Exactly.
need first. So you
Yeah.
go by your own experience and intuitive knowledge. That's very useful, very helpful. It sounds to me
Mhm.
very much. Um, you mentioned off record about, I know I read on your bio too about transmission. That caught my attention. And you mentioned before we started recording today that you would read something that
Mhm.
might kind of get the energies of the body kind of to move or to connect with. So is that a good
Yeah,
time to try that?
absolutely. This is a perfect time. So I'm going to have to put my glasses on here.
Sure.
So what I would suggest, right, because we are so visual, and that's just how
Yeah.
we take in information, is that you close your eyes, you
Yeah,
know, get settled in your body, and just listen to the words as
I'll
I'm
do it.
speaking them, because something happens when people read something. It slows down, and if your eyes aren't looking, then it's easier
Mm,
for your ears to take in. And one of the things
mm,
that I like to do is make pictures in my head as I'm hearing the words. So I would
mm.
suggest to you and anybody listening in the audience,
I
please, I
will.
think you'll get more out of it if you do this. All
Let's
right.
do it.
So this little what I'm about to read you is an explanation of how I do what I do, how I feel the energy works, and hopefully will give you a better idea for yourself,
Yeah,
a framework to understand better.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So everything in life operates on a frequency,
Mm,
and when you raise your vibration, you naturally shed your problems that exist on those lower levels. Modern physics shows that 98 to 99% of who we are is actually space, right down to the atoms and molecules of our bodies. Now, over time, as we live our lives, this space becomes energetically cluttered. Now, my work involves clearing the space of you with the use of deep vibrational frequencies. When atoms and molecules spin at the right level, they are
mm,
like egg beaters, and the batter just flies off of them. This is a purification of your field, and as a result, the space of you becomes more transparent. Now I'm spinning off the beliefs, the karma, emotions that are tied to thoughts, and whatever out of your field.
mm,
Now, this space of you also holds time, and when it goes deep enough, it rearranges the time and space of you so it cannot hold whatever you want to get rid of. Because everything that happens to you is held in place by time. And now injecting space into a symptom or a limited belief held within the unconscious means it can no longer be held in place, and it releases. What this is doing is changing the very matrix in which your symptoms exist. It's about healing the context of who you are to make it so nutritious and delicious that the context says to the symptom, go someplace else. We would rather be healthy.
mm,
This creates sacred geometry in your field.
mm,
These are natural patterns that align you with universal order. So, this space clearing brings the human energy field back into a sacred geometric alignment. And the experience of the application of this energy is that it acts like an intelligent force, restoring balance and helping you remember who you truly are.
Mm, wow. I love that. I love that as a reminder, as a beautiful reminder. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Of I love sacred geometry. You see a flower of life
Mm-hmm.
back here, and I have it everywhere.
Of course,
I
there you
have
go.
it everywhere. It's I have
Mm-hmm.
different ones around the place, and that's like intuitive too. So to bring it's nature basically. So it's that's what it is, right? Mathematic form for nature. That's the blueprint of
Well, that's the
creation.
astrological chart too,
Oh, is
right?
it?
Of course.
Mm,
Yeah, because it's the mandala and everything is geometrically related. And,
right.
there's, you get perfect geometries.
That's
That's
funny because
what's informing your life. Yes.
I keep
Because
it
the flower of
everywhere.
life has everything in it, right? So,
Hmm. Yeah.
as does the astrological chart. And of course, they're both mandalas and circles. So,
Yeah. Isn't it? So everything is indeed connected,
mhm.
interconnected. Nothing is
Yeah,
really separate from one another.
it's the
And that's another
holographic universe.
that's a beautiful understanding too, Malamarie, about I love saying your name. I'm like I usually say people's name all the time, but yours especially kind of there's a melody to it. And now
Mm,
Malamarie's you
thank
could
you.
sing it if you could. So almost like we could sing it easily if you want to.
Mhm.
So it goes back to those fundamental spiritual understanding that everything has one essence, and that is sacred. The essence, the foundation of life, of creation, is one. It's not two, and everything is interconnected. So maybe that's why I had this understanding early on in my life, and then later on, the sacred geometry came, and then a lot of people don't really notice, they don't know about it, or they are not interested, or they feel like it's not as powerful as some forms of energy healing, for example, or astrology. They would prefer that. And astrology is a lot more popular, although it's very complex, but it's more popular than sacred geometry these days. I know it was very it can be found in so many places in the world. And I remember that in Egypt, the pyramids of Egypt, you got like two of them very close to one another. There
Mhm.
has been drawn there for so. I mean, how many years? Thousands of years, right? So they knew something. These ancient. That's why you brought the ancient, you mentioned ancient wisdom. And I know the topic of our conversation today, which I kind of rephrased because of the length, but is energy healing through astrology, ancient star wisdom, mending modern bodies. I mean, yeah, that's exactly what you're doing, kind of bringing all this ancient knowledge back to our daily lives, because it seems like we have forgotten, haven't we? And I like that you're
Mhm.
working with the young people too. That's the
Yeah.
future of
Mhm.
our life, isn't it? The future of this planet. So we
Mhm.
need them to have this
Mhm.
understanding.
Mhm. Yeah.
So we're almost at the end, and I have so many other questions here. I would love to. I know you sent me some videos too, and I watched them, and I
Yep. They're
have
all
you
on my
like,
website. Everything is on my website. So,
oh, so everything's there. So I
mhm.
want to mention your website. So is malamarienergy.com. It will be
Mhm.
on the podcast notes.
And also there's I have a free report when people go to my website, and they can, it's just, there's a banner at the top, and so again that goes into greater detail, explaining what I do, and kind of gives you more of a background and foundation. But then I have several videos on my website too, and I
Yes.
post a blog every week, so
Oh,
there's
good.
lots of ways to get information.
Right. You see like pieces of information too. Some people don't have a lot of time, so it's kind of
Exactly.
helpful. And you offer the 30-minute complimentary one-on-one
Mhm.
meeting. And
Yes.
then I love that you call the a clarity call. That's the
Yeah.
name of when you begin this session, right?
Mhm.
Mallory? Clarity call. I
Yeah,
like
and
that.
it's meant to be like a healing in and of itself. Like, I don't do what I would know, what I do in the sessions there, but what I really need to tap into before I begin to work with anybody is like where they're at, what they want in their life, what do they think is in the way of them getting what they want, and so then we
Yeah.
hone in, and then I know I have this sort of overarching principle, or, you know, this sense of where the person is feeling they need help. And then
Mm,
that begins as a way to structure what we do and how I read the chart. And, you know, it's been very effective because the line of, you know, I just ask people a series of questions. And what I find is it always brings everything out in the course of that. And so,
mm,
you know,
mm,
and that in and of itself is a healing for people, right? Because they get to a
true.
place where, you know,
Yeah.
we're usually able to give them potentially an understanding that they didn't have before the clarity call. So that's the reason I use that word clarity call. And then that's just, and that's, you know, complimentary, that's free. And then if they decide they want to go further and work with me,
Yeah.
then that's there too. So,
Those
and down
sessions.
the short and down the road, I'll probably just be doing also astrology readings. I'm just not doing them separate because I like unfolding
Mm,
them slowly, because
yeah.
it's that way that people absorb the information and can work with it in their lives. And I find that that's more effective.
Yeah.
And then when you add the energy in, and I have a training from, you know, that my discipline is the training that I have from a
Mm,
very, very good school. I was in a 4-year program. So,
mm, mm.
you know, I have a lot of, you know, not just the wealth of knowledge from everything that I've done, but I'm also well trained and have a good sense of, you know, what is going on with people energetically. So that I'm able to tap into when they work with me.
I know that helps a lot, doesn't it? You have the experience, you have your own inner wisdom, and
Yes.
then you have all these. I mean, you're open too. So
Yes.
knowledge that's coming from being open and curious, that's
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah.
So you're.
And yeah,
Mm,
and one of the things I also just sort of want to mention is that, you know, um, I work with a lot of people that have, well, and most people often have something going on physically with them. But I like to work with people that have physical issues, because I tell you why. Because by the time it's worked its way down from all the different levels, spiritual, mental, emotional, and into the physical body, it is the densest manifestation, and it's the hardest to move,
uh,
right?
yeah, that's
So
true.
I find the energy is so effective for this kind of healing. So, you know, I say it's really good for people that maybe, you know, maybe they haven't been able to get a diagnosis, they don't know what's going on, or they have this sort of layering of symptoms, or they're just not understanding why they no longer have any energy. So,
Mm,
you know, we kind of, once we collapse these levels of a person's being, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, that's often where the healing happens. So, you know, I like to put that out there if people aren't sure about who would be right for. I mean, everybody, I'm sure, can benefit from this, but I feel like that is where it has its, you know, best and most efficient application. So,
yeah.
but often in this day and age, most people are suffering and struggling with something, like even if it's just, you know, old sports injuries and stuff. So
That's true. Yeah,
there
it
can
was
be a
my
lot of,
case.
yeah,
Yeah.
effectiveness there. Hmm.
Yeah, it was my case for sure. Um, so there's something that I really, I put it here. I love this. You said, while conventional methods focus on symptoms, this integrated approach that you address, astrology and energy healing, it will take care of the root cause of the problem, energy patterns, and spiritual alignment. Oh, you know, also holistic wellness. So spiritual alignment, and you mentioned now that sometimes starts there too. Some people. I remember that the energy healing that I did the about 3 months ago, he said to me something like, you still have the pain in your body because you're not aligned. So it's all about truth and you're not being truthful. I'm like, what? What am I not being truthful about? And I start like meditating every day and doing a lot of prayers and kind of going really deep, to see what was out of alignment because I couldn't really sense that. And I thought I was living exactly the aligned life that I was supposed to live. And then he said, keep going, don't stop with that. That's where you find the answer. And eventually, yeah, somebody showed up, as you said. So another healer showed up, and then she kind of guided me exactly to that specific truth that I was not able to see. Isn't that
Mm.
amazing?
Yeah,
Amazing.
because you know what? If something is made its way down to the physical, it's got a, you know, it's got a counterpart on each of those other levels. And so you sometimes may have to go back. You may have to go back through the ancestral line. You may have to go back through the person's past lives, right? This is what's so beautiful about the astrological chart. It'll show, you know
Wow.
what, and if you have to go back into those other lines, or maybe it's the belief system that's out of
Mm,
alignment, or you're in resistance to,
yeah.
you may, that you don't even know, in the subconscious, the unconscious, right? So
Right. Right.
that's like where it kind of collapses those levels, right? So what's going on in the physical, we, like I say, we start at the highest, the energy, because sometimes
Right.
that's all that's needed, and then we work down through the layers. And then, because, but if you
Amazing.
collapse the higher layers, then you can get to the, to at least some relief for the physical problem, right? And again, it just depends where
Yeah.
people are at, and how
I
much,
know it's really amazing, Malamarie. I have interviewed a lot of people here who were diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. They're
yeah.
pretty much, you die, so there's nothing that we can do. And then they go to like a shaman in Brazil or
Mhm.
Peru, and then they're alive, has been 5, 10 years. They never died from cancer and all that. So isn't it funny because they were able to address the energetic levels? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
so
that's, I
incredible.
think, sort of what's missing, I feel. And it's been said, energy medicine is the medicine of the future. I mean, if you don't have to surgically go into someone and you can heal it at an energetic level,
Why not? Better, so much
who
better.
wouldn't be happy with that, right? Plus,
Yeah.
we're also, we live,
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
we live on the earth, but we're also, as you say, as you spoke about in the beginning, this connection to the stars, right? And then the stars are
Yes.
part of, like,
Mm.
the galaxy, right? And then there's other
Yes.
galaxies, and then there's a
Yes.
universe. And so, do you know what I
Mm.
mean? Like, we're members
Yeah.
of all of those, but we've never been trained to think that
Mm.
way. We just think our own little solar system. And
Mm.
so these kinds of, these energies I bring in are sort of working on, off of that larger sort of you
Yeah.
know tableau.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for saying that again. So, because we are multidimensional, right? We are not
Exactly.
just, we don't live in
Exactly.
one dimension.
Mhm.
Yeah, like yesterday, I remember feeling so embraced by that star that I was like, oh, that's the Star Nation, of
Yeah.
course. And then that came to me. I know some shamans here that they mentioned that there's the Plant Nation, there's a Water Nation, there's a Star Nation, and we belong. Some of us have a deeper connection with one or two nations more than others. So isn't it funny, the human nation, to all kind angel nations, we all kinds of nations. I
Yeah.
mean,
I
it's
mean,
just fascinating, fascinating.
it said we are stardust, right? So,
Yeah.
and
Oh.
yeah, and some indigenous peoples incarnate from us directly from a star. So,
Oh yes,
mhm.
right, right. Oh, I have had some interesting experience around here. Maybe one day we'll meet in person, Mal and Marie, and
That would be lovely.
that'll be a beautiful celebration to healing and spirituality coming together.
Yes.
So we're almost at the end. I want to mention your website again. So it's malamarieenergy.com. It'll be on the podcast notes. And I had so many. Oh, there's quote that I really like. I think it's on your website. It says, "Nothing is impossible. The word itself says, the word impossible already says, I am possible." That was Audrey
It's Audrey
Hepburn.
Hepburn, but I've heard it said by other people. I just,
Oh, you did. Yeah.
yeah.
I
So,
love that. I used to play with that word, the impossible, huh?
yeah.
So we're almost at the end. I want to thank you for your presence in
Yeah.
our shared reality and being open to the extent that you are to explore in the depth of life, not just your own human experience, but also go in outside of that and with openness. That's what it takes to really have a beautiful experience here
Mhm.
while we're here. So thank you for passing that on to others as you are sharing the wisdom because that's sacred.
Mhm.
And in this very end, before we say goodbye, would you like to add anything else, Mala Marie? Anything, a message, anything that you forgot to say, left unsaid, anything? In this
Yeah.
very end.
I think I'll just circle back to where I started about, people's dissatisfaction with being in the present moment. I mean, that's really how you heal, right? It's
Oh yeah.
subverted by, this sort of embodied
Mm,
presence, like, just like literally, feeling like the clothes on your skin, like
yeah.
these kinds of things, like,
Mm,
just you put your hands on your thighs and you can just feel, is it hot? Is it cold? Just tuning
mm,
into the physical sensations in your body. And you can
mm,
do that at any moment, anywhere, or
yeah.
your breath, right? So, coming back to that present moment, I mean, that's how we all heal, is right by staying there. We're not like living in the past or projecting onto a future. We're just here. And then everything arises out of that, one moment to the next. And then you're
Right.
in the flow. That's how you're in the flow,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So, yeah,
Mm.
because, just the
Thank you.
happening of the moment.
Yeah, thank you for that beautiful, profound, and true reminder. Yeah,
Mm,
that's an
yeah,
ancient, spiritual, ancient knowledge that we
absolutely.
need to be reminded over and over again. That's my case
Yeah,
too, the practice. So
yeah.
thank you so much again for your beautiful presence, and we'll
Thank
talk
you
soon.
so much again for
Yeah,
having me. It's been a delight to speak with you, and I
thank
love
you.
your enthusiasm and your energy and your interest in these topics. It's so needed at this time.
Oh my God, I love it. I have to say
Yeah.
over and over and over. I can't help it. It's a choiceless choice. So yeah,
Exactly. It's a
yeah,
nice way to put it. Yeah. All
yeah.
right.
So thank you for the
All
resonance,
right.
and we'll
Thank you,
talk soon.
Valeria.
Thank you. Bye for now, Malamarie.
Bye
Bye for now,
bye.
my
You
dear.
have a great day.